Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We're delighted to have all of you here with us today, whether you're joining from Europe or Shanghai. Welcome again to today's workshop, Cross-Border Data Transfers, Carve Out a Safe Business Success in China. The workshop today is organized by the EU SME Centre in collaboration with the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China, aiming to help European SMEs to understand practical steps to meet compliance requirements and some of the compliance risks and challenges in cross-border data transfer. My name is Aonan He, the training coordinator of the EU SME Centre based in Beijing, and I will be guiding you throughout today's workshop. On our agenda today, we will be firstly having Mr. Liam Jia, the team lead of the EU SME Centre, and Mr. Michael Tan, the National Vice Chair of the Legal and Competition Working Group from the European Chamber, to give opening remarks. The second part, which is the essence of today's workshop, is two keynote speeches. We're honored to have invited two experts on the subject matter of cross-border data transfers. Our first keynote speaker is Mr. Valentino Lucchini, who is an Italian and Spanish lawyer working for a top-tier Chinese law firm, Wang Jing and GH law firm, for almost 10 years. He is specialized in cybersecurity, technology transfer, AI, and foreign investment in China, Europe, and the United States. Another keynote speaker is Ms. Yan Sun, who is Associate Director in PwC Risk Assurance, Governance, Internal Audit Practice of PwC China. She has over 12 years of experience working in PwC and is specialized in cybersecurity, data security, internal control, and enterprise risk management. Mr. Valentino Lucchini, Ms. Yensun, we're pleased to have you both with us here today. After the two keynote speeches, we are going to have our panel discussion and Q&A session. The panel discussion will be moderated by Mr. Michael Tan. Mr. Michael Tan has more than 20 years of experience in advising international companies on their operations in and with China, specializing in IT regulatory and data privacy protection areas. We have two panelists with us today for the discussion. Mr. Xiaowei Zhu, the leader of EMEA Global to China program in Amazon Web Services, who has over 8 years of experience in China cloud computing market, helping multinational companies successfully expand their digital business to China. Mr. Eduardo Antoni Berno is another panelist who is with us today. He is a senior associate at Garrigus in China, where he specializes in cross-border advice and foreign direct investment in China and Spain. He has extensive experience in data protection and provides advice on commercial contracts and general corporate advice to companies and corporate groups on commercial, civil, and corporate law matters. Panelists, welcome. At the end of today's workshop, we would like to ask you to give us feedback on today's workshop via a QR code so that we could better serve in the future. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Mr. Liam Jia, welcome.
Thank you for the introduction. Can I maybe share my slides quickly? Can you confirm that you see the slides?
Yes, we can see your slide.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Liam Jia, the team leader of the EU SME Centre. My pleasure to be addressing to you for today's webinar. A little bit about the EU SME Centre for those of you who are not so familiar with us yet. The EU SME Centre is a EU-funded project providing support for small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe on doing business in China. Our core mission is to facilitate market access and also to provide a comprehensive range of first-line advices, first-line services to EU SMEs to inform, to advise, to train them, and eventually to also connect them with the markets and business opportunities in China. The project was initially founded in 2010, so this is now the 13th year of this project, and we're currently in the 4th phase of the project. Implemented by a consortium of partners, which of course includes our partner, European Union Chamber of Commerce, which is also the host of today's webinar, hybrid workshop. A bit more about the services we offer, the SME Center. First of all our services are free of charge for European SMEs. We have a self-diagnosis tool available on our website for companies, for SMEs to do self-assessments on your readiness to China through filling in a few customized questionnaires. We also have published more than 200 market reports, guidelines, as well as case studies and success stories from SMEs. We provide inquiry services also on a confidential and free of charge basis on all range of questions and inquiries on exporting and investment to China. We also organize trainings, both hybrids, face-to-face, and also online webinars on also a multitude of topics. Last but not least, tapping into the resources, very well established resources of the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China. We also constantly voice on behalf of EU SMEs vis-a-vis the Chinese authorities, the policymakers, to constantly improve the business environment that small and medium-sized companies operate in China. Before I pass on quickly to my colleague at the European Chamber, just to quickly present you the ways to contact the SME Center further. You see our contact email on this slide. And without further ado, I pass the floor to Mr. Michael Tan, and I wish you a very successful event and interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liam Jia. Mr. Michael Tan, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Very glad to have this chance to give an opening address for our event today. I won't speak for too long. Just I think some of you or many of you might have known about, might have already quite a lot of insight about this topic. Well, it's indeed very hot topic these days. Particularly for China, and data is everywhere. So we can say that no company is not having data, okay? But how that exactly will mean from a legal perspective, because these days also compliance topics, ESG, all this is picking up its weight, and there will be a lot of concerns. And from European angle, it's very easy to understand, but from PRC angle, there will be quite some special features which we need to bear in mind. So today we are very glad to have our distinguished and knowledgeable expert to share with us the latest insight and development. So do hope that helps. Just very few words about the legal working group. I mean, this is a topic where which is also covered by some other working group of the chamber, like ICT working group. They are more active in Beijing. The legal working group here, which can be more accessible by the members here. We collaborate closely with that working group. So if you are interested in this topic, do feel to reach out to our chamber colleagues. There will be a lot of occasions where you can get knowledge and contribute to, and also help to the chamber to make this a more meaningful platform for all our members. So that's all from my side. Now I would like to hand over to Valentino. Front yours, please.
It's clear, right? All right. So I think need to select my slides first. In the beginning, I would like to suggest you guys to go on the website of the EU SME Centre and find the little book that's been published last year about data protection. Maybe not all of you knows, but last year we collaborated with the center to publish a very informative book about data protection in China. This little book is full of informations. It also guides you about data export. So please go on the website. It's full of interesting resources that can help small and medium enterprises. This is just a brief presentation of myself. Some of you may shy, not ask questions. Please scan the QR code or drop me an email if you have any doubt, okay? This is free legal consultation. I won't charge you, don't worry about that, right? Moving on, next slide. I'm stuck on the technology. All right, so my speech, we focus on the key laws. It doesn't sound extremely sexy. Laws usually are pretty boring. So I will try to make it interesting for you. But I believe starting from the law give you a solid base to develop upon in order to understand how to put in practice what the legislator gave us. The second speech by Yan will explain to you how to do it, how to really implement in your company what the law requires. So please bear with me. I know this part is gonna be a little bit, intense, but we try to make it interesting. I will touch upon 3 points. The first point is why is important to protect data going abroad. Some of you may think, hey, I'm transferring outside China. What do you want from me? It's out. You don't need to bother me, right? But there are some reasons why we need to protect data going outside. And it's also important for you as a company to take care of this, okay? The second part, we will deep down on the laws. I will explain to you what laws apply in this case, how to understand them. It's gonna be very high level introduction. I won't use too many articles of law. I try to be not super specific, just to give you a flavor of what's happening in China. Last but not least, I will give you some what I call baby steps, very early steps to do in order to understand your stance. What's your position right now about cross-border data or data protection in general? So first part, why it's important to regulate data going outside, data export, right? And I wanna tackle this problem from unusual angle, data breaches. People may think, okay, what data breaches has to do with data going outside, right? I shouldn't care. Well, if we look, next slide, next again. Okay, if we look here, we can see some statistics by Verizon. It just said that 82% of data breaches happen because there is human's reason behind this. A human reason does not mean there is a hacker, which is super skilled. It means somebody in your company made a mistake and there is a data breach. Data is violated, right? This is nothing to do with data export, right? But if we look at the third information over there, 62%, it's also said the 62% of breaches do not happen because of your fault, but because of your partner, your vendor, the people that receive your data. You believe I transfer the data to you, I'm fine. The person who received it may make a mistakes. This could compromise your system, could compromise your company, and your company may bear fines. Next. This is just some statistics for SMEs. The majority of these breaches happen because there are credential theft, like your credential, you don't use strong passwords, like your password is spring 2023, and your username is admin. Everybody can breach your system, or phishing, or exploit, etc. Next. Again, the 62%, but what's more important is the next slide. So, Valentino, I transferred the data to somebody else. I send it to Germany. Why would I care what happened in Germany, right? I don't care, it's far away. It takes me 10 hours by flight. Why the legislator bother me? Well, the legislator in China give you some restraint. It tells you, no matter you transfer the data, that's gonna be your responsibility. You are responsible because you collect the data first and you transfer. So you must ensure that who collects your data is up to the task. If you transfer your data to your headquarters in the United States, or you transfer your data to Europe, you must bear in mind that if Europe does something stupid, you bear consequence here in China. You have all three laws that tell you the same. Data security law, cyber security law, personal information law, all of them say the same or similar things. All right? So don't just believe, I'm transferring data to my supplier, it's okay, it's his fault. No. You need to bear this in mind. And they ask you to vet your partner. You need to have some kind of due diligence on the recipient of the data. What does it mean? It means that if the authority come to your office, they go to your purchase department and they want to see, hey, show me what due diligence you have done on your supplier. Show me there is a checklist. Show me there is a document saying that your supplier that receive your data, right, is up to the task, is following the law. You don't have this, you're in violation of the law. Accountability in data protection, okay, reverse the burden of proof. You must prove to be compliant. They don't have to prove that you violate the law. It's not like, oh, they don't have proof I violate the law. No, it's reverse. They come and you are already in violation. You must prove you are not. This is essential. You need to have a set of documents in your office ready for inspections. Okay? Next slide. This is an example of a data breach happened in 2013, about Targets, the chain in the United States. And this is important because Targets was fined $18 million US, even though the loss seems to be more than 200 millions. And what happened is that Target is a big company, cybersecurity-wise, very kick-ass, super awesome, lawyers there working for them, but they've been breached because their vendor was breached. They use a company to make some kind of coupons payments that the company does not have cybersecurity protection. Hacker breached the company and through the system breached Target because Target give access to them, right? So when you give access to vendor or partner to your network, to your system, you are increasing risk. Next. Another case, Cambridge Analytica. I don't know if you heard about that. Well, what happened is that Cambridge Analytica collect data of a lot of Facebook user through kind of like game or this kind of quiz information. And through this kind of system, okay, they also collect data of friends, your friends on Facebook. This allows them to create a common model of what you like and target you with certain advertisement. This is a clear example of an export of data that caused a lot of damage. Those people were in the United States, Cambridge Analytica is in the UK, process all this information and damage them. And this is related with the data export. If there is no data export, people outside the border can do what they want. If they can damage your right as a data user. Next. So what does it mean this? Bear in mind, more sharing, more risk. More sharing, more risk. You share your data with your logistic company, more risk. You share your data with your accountant, more risk. Share data with lawyers, more risk. You need to vet them, all of them, each one of them. Valentino, is your firm up to task? Do you have antivirus? Do you have firewall? Have you been breached? You need to ask me those questions. You don't ask, I don't care. I just do what I want with your data, but you will be responsible. So, and the reason why, there are basically those three reasons, is because there could be third-party breaches. I may lose your data and you bear consequences. There might be compliance violations. The supplier does something stupid, your vendor does something stupid, responsibilities is yours, and there could be data loss as well. Think about if you use a cloud service to collect all your information about your CRM, and later the cloud provider just go down. You don't have access to your client's information. You cannot issue invoice. Okay. When we talk about cybersecurity, we also need to think about availability. Data need to be available. Next. So what to do? Ask yourself questions. Very easy. Do I need to transfer this data back to Germany? A lot of my clients in China come to me and say, hey, HQ said, give me the data. We have a server, we have a VPN, need to connect. Ask why? Hey, because they ask me. I don't suggest you to tell the government the same thing. Don't go to the government and say, hey, because Germany asked me, I give the data, because you're gonna be fined big time. You need to have a purpose. You need to explain why. Your purpose have to be clear, okay? So when it comes to data export, it's very sensitive. You need to have a reason for exporting the data. The reason has to be clear, and you need to protect this data while it's transferred. Next. So what about the second part? What kind of law we are talking about, right? Well, next. We are talking about the three laws, major laws that we have in China. We're talking about the cybersecurity law. We're talking about the personal information protection law and the data security law. In the next slide, don't change it, please. Wait. The next slide, you will understand how they interact. Just to let you understand that all of three that are effective right now. So you must be compliant yesterday. All right. And there is one common line that I will explain during the baby steps as well, and is highlighted in red. All three laws ask you to implement security and organizational measure to protect the data. Okay? Technical and organizational. Technical means computer, buy Windows, don't buy on Taobao. You need a real license. You need to have patches. You need to update the system. You need to have firewall. You need to have antivirus up to date. Okay? You need to encrypt data if you can. Organizational, you need to have people that handle this. You cannot simply let everything to the maybe one IT guy. They need to run your website, handle the data for everybody, fix your computer, and also fix the mobile phone of your wife. It makes no sense. You need to have an organization system where people works together on something like that. And last but not least, all three laws ask you to classify the data. We will see why classify the data is important. Data classification. Think about information protection like your house, right? If you have valuable things inside your house, you won't keep the door open because you know you have jewelry, you have a big TV and PlayStation 5. You lock everything in, all right? If you don't know what data you have, if you don't do a data classification, you might not care. It just keep everything open. I don't know, I have nothing of value. And everybody can have access to this data. So first step of everything, data classification. Next. So how those three laws interact, I make these very ugly things there, but give you a flavor of what's happening. The cybersecurity law takes care of network. Let's think in this way, right? What is a network? Couple computers connect together that communicate. That could be a network. So everything that is outside the network is not part of the cybersecurity law. So when I put the PIPL paper outside, is that if for some reason you have very old-fashioned style, you don't use computers, and you just have paper of everything, you don't need to care about the cybersecurity law. You are a total analog person. You use paper for everything. No computer whatsoever, even phones. So PIPL still apply. You say, why? I don't have computer. Why the PIPL apply? Because PIPL covers informations. No matter how they're made, computer, paper, whatever, is information, PIPL. And later inside the cybersecurity, we have the data security, which cares about data in general, like business data or any kind of data. And we have the PIPL, which is like informations on a digital manner, like on a spreadsheet or something like that. Next. So cross-border transfer, let's go to the point. Need to think of 3 rules, okay? There are also the 3 ways for you to transfer data outside. The first one is the measure for security assessment of data transfer, which we can call CAC approval. CAC, the Cyberspace Administration of China. Just think about government approval, first one. Means government need to say yes. If not, you can't transfer. Don't even try. Did you saw what happened to Didi? They were fined big time. The second one is kind of implementing rules about certification. Chinese government tells you under certain circumstances, you don't need to come to the government. We don't want to see you. It's just a small potato. Just obtain a certificate from a third company that come inspect you, tell you you're good, and you can do the transfer. So you use third party to check on your stance, all right? The last one is the one that everybody loves, is a kind of standard contractual clauses, standard contract. Similarly to Europe, and later we will explain the panel more deeply, the government said, under certain conditions, you sign a contract with the recipient, you do a self-assessment where you tell me you are good, and you can do the transfer. You just need to, register this contract at the GEMFO, the government, and everything will be okay. Okay, so move on. So 3 ways of transferring data. Actually, there is a 4th, but it's not written here, but okay. First, pass the CAC approval, government approval. Second, sign those contract. Third, pass the certification. 4th is if you're not processing personal information and you are not under the condition of the CAC security measure, you just transfer the data without care. Well, you should care, but yeah, freely, let's say. Move on. Real quick. When the CAC apply, when you need to go to the government, we will see later with Yan how to do this. I just give you a flavor right now. If you are among those companies here, congratulations, means you're kind of big. We will be very happy to be your lawyers. But just in brief, if you transfer important data, and later we will explain to you what is important data, you need to go to the government, because important data may damage national security and the economy of the country. Important data usually don't care about damaging corporate interest. They don't care if disclosure of this data make your company go bankrupt. That is not considered important data, not because you are not important, but because the important in this sense is about the nation. You need to think about, oh God, if I send this information out, China will go busted. So usually this is the kind of level that you need to think about it. So that's important data. If you do important data, go to the government. If you are a CIO, critical information infrastructure operator, means you are somebody that deal with the water, energy, maybe transportation, those kind of big, massive state-owned company. Transfer data, government. Cannot just go ahead, transfer by yourself. You need the government. Or if you're not that big company, but you process 1 million individual data, like you are an e-commerce platform, go to the government. For everybody else, because this is SMEs intervention, and I try to close faster because I'm taking too much time, you need to look at the other points. Means that you are not CIO, you don't process 1 million data, but in the last year, you process personal information of 100,000 people, means 100,000 name, 100,000 date of birth, those kind of information, which are not sensitive, or 10,000 people sensitive information. We will see quickly later, sensitive information are those information that if disclosed that damage the individual. Okay, for example, sexual orientation, financial status. I don't want you to know my bank account. So if you disclose my bank account, that's sensitive. All right. So if you have 10,000 bank account in your computer, you need to go to the government if you want to export them. All right. Move on. Real quick. When you do this, you need to do an assessment. In the world of IT, everything is self-assessment. If you deal with computer, the government or whatever standard, they will always ask you to self-assess. So there are some steps that you need to take in order to say, am I doing the right things? Do I need to export this data or not? Just real quick, move on. Again. Okay, so the government focus on 7 things here. Because this is the government approval, right? So what they want to know? They want to know why you're transferring data. What kind of data, for what reason? Who received the data? Who is this? It's your company. Do they protect the data or not? So you need to think that if you don't know your HQ situation, you won't pass this approval because you need to explain the Chinese government what's the status of your HQ abroad from cybersecurity and data protection perspective. So you need to know this information. Real quick. Move. Okay, standard contractual clause. When I can do the contract, very easy, you don't need the government. In all the situation in which you don't need to apply to the government, you don't have 1 million information, personal information, you don't have 100,000 personal information, you don't have 10,000 sensitive information. In this case, you do a contract and you do a self-assessment, and you are okay. You apply to the provincial government, CAC, and you are fine. Move on. Also here, self-assessment. You need to self-assess why you transfer the data and if the recipient it's okay. Let's move real quick. Again. Certification, the last method, because I think I have 5 minutes to finish up. Certification is a third party come and check. When I can use certification, you can use the certification the same way you can use the standard contractual clause. Like I don't want to use the standard contractual clause because I have transfer very often and I don't want to bother to register all those contracts. I do the certification with HQ, so it can be done between affiliate company, and I make it easy. I do once, and I don't need to do it for a period of time. So no matter how many transfer I do each time, it's okay. Also here, for this situation, you need to do self-assessment. Real quick, we move to baby steps. All right. Again, because if not, the other panelists will kill me. First step, go. Data classification. Data classification, guys. Data classification is important. You didn't do data classification, you can't think of exporting data because you don't know what you have. How can you do a self-assessment and say, nothing is important, don't worry government, everything will be fine if you don't know what's your data? Many company comes to us and say, Valentino, can you do the standard contractual clause? I say, yes, of course. First of all, they are provided by the government, so I don't need to do much. But later I ask, do you know what data you have? No, I didn't do data inventory. So how can we assess the risk? Next, because you need to classify business information. What is business information? What is personal information? What is sensitive? You need to have an spreadsheet on your computer in which you write down a data flow. What data you receive? I receive name, date of birth, address of this person because of the CV. I store it somewhere. I destroy it after 5 years. I do all these kind of things. You need to have that. Next. Second step. What are the risks? I know what data I have. What's the risk? Next. Is this a high risk? If I lose your bank account, what happened to you? If I lose information about your religion, what's happening? You need to do a matrix. Third, how can I protect it? I know the risk. I know the data, I know the risk. Now, how can I protect it? Do I need to encrypt this data at rest when it's on my driver? Do I need a backup? You need to understand what kind of attack as well. This is something that I suggest maybe to do a speech sometimes later. Not all companies are the same. You can be subject to a different data breach than a multinational company. Not all hackers in the world are looking for you with an IP scanner. Maybe they don't care. But if you're a small company, you might be subject to ransomware because somebody clicked the wrong link, download the wrong malware, and you got a ransomware. So you need to know what kind of attack your company is subject. Do you have a website? Do you have a web server? Is it Apache or another kind? Different technology, different attack, different risk, different measure. Last, pick the right model of transfer. So now you know all these kind of things. You are ready to say, I go to the government, I do the courses, I do the certificate. You ready to decide. You cannot decide that if you didn't do the first 3 steps. Makes no sense. I think this is everything from my side, right? I see everybody sleeping. I'm sorry. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Valentino Lucchini. Now, let's welcome our second keynote speaker, Ms. Yen Sun. Please share your screen and the floor is yours.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, great. Hold on. And I believe now you can see the slides, right?
Yes, we can see the slides.
Okay, great, great. All right. Thank you, Scarlett, and thank you, Valentino, for your very vivid introduction to give everybody a background of CBDT. So my name is Yan, and I'm from PwC Risk Assurance Practice based in Shanghai. So my focus area is to providing cybersecurity law, data security law, PIPL, especially CBDT assessment and remediation and submission to multinational clients. So many thanks to our European Chamber and also our EU SME Centre for organizing this very meaningful and very hot topic sharing session. And I really would like to be on site with you guys, but due to an unplanned and Sunder conflict, I have to be joining online. So, but this is my personal WeChat. If you have any questions or after the session, you still have a lot of questions, feel free to scan and add me, or you can keep continuing and joining our events, right? Organized by European Chamber and EU SME Centre, because we have a lot of events like this to mingle together and to share ideas together. All right, so that's a very brief introduction of myself. So I have 20 minutes of my session, which will probably last till 5:00 p.m. And Valentino has just explained to everybody this background of CBDT. So my session will be more focused on the details or more execution level of what Valentino just mentioned. So first of all, let's look at this slide. So this one is PwC's Global CEO Survey we perform every year. And this is the 26th year that we have performed this Global CEO Survey. So this year, we actually surveyed about 4,000 CEOs and from 100 countries and regions. 2 messages from this survey. So one is, if you could see, the cyber risk is still a top risk for both global companies and Chinese companies, especially for Chinese companies. Last year, it was 22%, which is 22% of the CEOs consider cyber risk as the top risk. And this year is 23. although global-wide it's decreasing, but China-wide cyber risk is still a top risk and it's increasing. Message number two is, let's look at this geopolitical conflict. It's ranked as #1 that facing the CEOs or causing concerns to the CEOs. So geopolitical conflict, to our understanding, is that because data is more and more important, and personal data, especially important data, they are having more values, and the more asset perspective are unveiled by data. So with the background of geopolitical or geoeconomic conflicts, data protection or personal data information protection will be more stringent. So that's our kind of the background context to give everybody a sense that data protection, why it's becoming more and more stringent, because it's under this ground of this global trend. All right, so with that, a little bit macro discussion. Let's look at the framework of the China Cybersecurity and Data Protection Law. So this is something that Valentino just mentioned. The three main laws, right? CSL, China Cybersecurity Law, Data Security Law, and Personal Information Protection Law. So under these three laws, the two measures that Valentino just mentioned are mostly relevant to companies like European companies or any foreign companies with operations in China. The first one is measures for the security assessment of CBDT, and the second one is standard contract. So the page after this will talk in detail why these two measures are important. But here we would like to give everybody this idea, because measures, it sounds like, okay, is that a best practice or is that like advice? But it's actually not, because the measures, it's falling under the three main laws of the cybersecurity data protection legal system, which means they are part of the law. So that is something some companies like our clients, they probably would ask, okay, is it really serious? Like, how about the penalty? Like, how about the enforcement? So the answer is you can consider it as law. Okay. And second message from this page is the CAC, which is Central Cyberspace Affairs Commission. And Valentino just talked about it. The CAC is this government body that we will deal with when we are handling CBDT. So later on, we'll talk about CAC a lot in this sharing session. Okay, so this is the framework of the China legal system related to cybersecurity and data protection. And next one is what is CBDT? So Valentino just talked about some information in this page. I'll fill in some of the details of this to give everybody a more in-depth understanding of this concept. So cross-border data transfer. Number one, cross-border, it sounds like we are sending data to out of China, or we are receiving data, right? Because it's cross-border. But actually, every country in this world, when we talk about data protection, we are only looking at the data transferred out of the country. So we wouldn't govern any data that transferred into the country. So although it's called CBDT, but really it is like outbounding transfer or outbound transferring. So that's number one. And number two, transfer. What does that mean? So transfer, everybody, like even myself, when I see the word, I probably will see, okay, I'm sending the data to any place outside of mainland China. But actually it has two meanings. One is, okay, I'm sending the data to any place outside of mainland China. But the second part is my foreign headquarters or my foreign subsidiaries, they have access to my data that's stored in China. So that is a scenario of CBDT as well. And this is a scenario that sometimes we probably would miss. Number three about CBDT is what is data? So data is actually not any data. So for example, if we are sending our financial data to our headquarters in Europe, it actually doesn't trigger CBDT. Data is really important data or personal information. So important data, by definition, it is the data that when leaked will cause or will threaten national security. So it's like really bad. But in reality, there's not a list of what exactly is important data for all the industries. So for example, for auto industry, there's actually a list already, like the location, right, gathered or collected by the vehicles. It is important data. But for a lot of industry, like pharmaceutical or retail manufacturing, there's not yet an important data list. So that's why when we are helping company to provide or to assess or to submit CBDT package, almost all the companies will go down this route, which is, okay, I don't have important data now, like as now defined by the law, but I do have personal information, then what shall I do? So Valentino just gave a very clear introduction of personal information, right? So when it exceeds the threshold, you have to do this. And when it's not, you have to do number two. Basic idea is that if we have personal information, so for example, our employee information, our vendor information, when it's not a vendor of a company, but a vendor company's contact, or when I have a customer and I have a contact from the customer, then that's all personal information, especially when it comes with their bank account, for example, or I'm a retail company and I'm to C or directly to customer, and I have their transaction history. So that is actually sensitive personal information. So that's why when we have personal information, we really need to look at the volume of our personal information or sensitive personal information to see which route I should go. And it's a very lengthy and a wording explanation here, but from practically speaking, the number we look at is, number one, it's just 10,000 individuals. So 10,000 individuals for SPI, which is sensitive personal information, such as if I'm a 2C company and I have customer bank account or their transaction history, then it will be sensitive personal information. So the number we should look at is 10,000. And 100,000 is personal information. So for example, my vendor's contact, I only have a name and the number or email address. So that will be personal information. And then the number I should look at is 100,000. Also employee data, because a lot of us probably use Workday, and we are collecting employee information, and the Workday is hosted in Europe or even any other countries. And then we are sending the employee data to outside of China. And employee data are most likely sensitive personal information because I have their performance record, right? And I have their payment history. So it's very sensitive. It should be counted as sensitive personal information. So that's why the number matter to us more is this 10,000 and this 100,000. So 2 months ago, February, there's a new rule, which is the measure of standard contract. It was released in February, and it will be effective in June, which is asking all the companies, they're saying, okay, if you are not exceeding the threshold, then you're still obligated to prepare the standard contract, which there's a template, and you should use the template to sign this contract with your data recipient. And you have to perform a PIA, which is privacy impact assessment. And you have to submit all these to CAC. So this, for SME, this is actually impacting us most, this new rule, because we are not exceeding the threshold. So last year, the new CBDT rule is asking the larger companies to perform all this exercise, but we are probably okay. But now with the standard contract, although the name of the new measure is called standard contract, but really what will take a lot of time is the PIA, because you really need to do the similar exercise to look at all the data flow and to measure the impact of the the private information. So that's why this is something that we really should take action from now to make sure we meet the December 1st deadline. Okay, so that's a like I would say still kind of general, but hopefully it will give you some flavor of what exactly CBDT and what it means to us. This one is kind of just to give you a flavor of what exactly is personal information and what is sensitive personal information. And I think many companies might miss is that like transaction and consumption records, they are actually sensitive personal information. And it doesn't mean all your transaction records. It could be just a one line item. So for example, I'm a retail company and I'm directly facing a client, or I have a Tmall web like a platform selling my products online. So I will naturally collect the transaction records of my customers. And if I'm sending this data to any place outside of mainland China, then that will trigger a CBDT scenario. So this is some like scenario that we have observed that might miss by certain companies. And next one is 2 pages about violations and penalties. So this 2 page, the first one is enterprise-wide speaking, because this is law, right? So this is serious. So if we have violation, then it will be penalties from both administrative perspective and civil responsibility perspective. And second one is the individual violation. So this one is important to us too, because the Chinese character on the left side is a commitment letter. And if we look at down to here, the legal representative, he or she needs to sign this confirmation. That's why many companies, when we are helping them to do the CBDT like assessment or submission, the CEO of China will actually be very involved because he or she needs to sign this commitment and send this to the government. So they will make sure that they know what's going on. And if something they state in the report package is untrue, then he personally or she personally will be fined or will be penalized. So that's why we are like emphasizing again, this is something not just serious, but from the CEO or the management team's perspective, individually, it will be impacted. Okay, so last 2 page is kind of a summary of what I have just shared. One is actions to take, and the second is common estimates. So the first one, actions to take. No matter we are SME or large global Fortune 500 companies, we all need to do data mapping. So data mapping will tell you, okay, what are the scenarios that will actually trigger CBDT? And in each scenario, what is the amount of personal information or sensitive personal information? And when we are preparing the submission package, we have to sum up all these scenarios to compare with the 10,000 number or the 100,000 number we just mentioned. So that's why we need to have this whole exercise to have a whole picture of how much data I'm sending exactly to outside of mainland China. So if the number in the end is below the threshold, which is, okay, I'm sending less than 10,000 sensitive personal information, or I'm sending less than 100K personal information, then I don't have to do the CBDT assessment report, but still I have to prepare the privacy impact assessment report and the standard contract to submit to CAC. If it's above the threshold, then it will be the CBDT assessment and the CBDT package to submit to CAC. So in the end, as long as we are sending even one individual data to outside of mainland China, CAC should have our information on their desk. So that's the main message. And because this rule is so new, And that's why many companies are missing this part. Okay, last page is the common underestimates. So common underestimates, the first one, I put it, SME is not equal to SME in personal information, which means we really need to look at our own company's business. So for example, some industries like gaming industry, right? The company may have only a handful of people in China. However, they have a lot of users playing their video games. So these data, if they're sent out to China, it will trigger CBDT. So we really should look at the personal information size due to the nature of our business and how we are sending or handling this information. The size of our business operation in China doesn't mean that we are small sized in CBDT scenario. So that is one common underestimate. And number two is underestimate of the complexity of the exercise. Because although it's just several PPT, but every page, when put into practice, it will go to month of exercise, because normally like consultants will be involved, because like us, we have to interview with all the business owners and all the IT owners, and to make sure that we are not undercount any system or undercount any system, data flow or any scenarios. So that's why it's a really complex exercise. And if even PIA, the privacy impact assessment, if we want to plan ahead, we really need to plan it right now. So number three is the underestimate of the time consumed in internal process and communication. Because the complexity perspective, the CAC is asking for all these things you need to collect and you need to elaborate. As to time, when you are doing the exercise, it's the internal part, sometimes between the global and China part, right? Because some of the systems, they are hosted by different global owners. So that's why really you need to, and also the time difference, really you need to spend a lot of time on this entire process. And number four is underestimate of the details of review by CAC, because we have helped a lot of companies performing the CBDT assessment and help them submit the whole package to CAC. And we have received rounds of comments by CAC. So our feeling is that they actually reviews very detailed. So especially they have their way of how this report should look like. So for example, the format and especially how the data volume, how you should present it, and also the legitimate or reasonableness of the data transfer if your evidence is solid. So it's really a detailed review by CAC. And lastly, it's underestimate of legal consequences of CBDT violation. So because CBDT is very new, we are still not aware of the CBDT actual violation. But due to the past, the similar rules, so for example, it's falling under the CSL, China Cybersecurity Law, right? So you can actually tell when it comes to data protection or cybersecurity, and when it's raised to national security, it's really serious. So the consequence could be strict too. All right, so this is all the contents I have prepared. And I hope everybody can get something from my sharing. And also, if you have any questions, we can talk about it in the coming session or in our future events. All right, back to Scarlett.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yensun and Mr. Valentino Lucchini. Now, in order for audiences to better engage with what were presented in our two keynote speeches, let's move on to our panel discussion, which will be moderated by Mr. Michael Tan and joined by panelists Mr. Xiaowei Zhu and Mr. Eduardo Antonio Berno. Panelists, the floor is yours.
I can give you mine.
Well, this is IT topic. Feel relaxed. Yeah. That suits very well for .coms. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can sort of share this one. Just so very good, and thank you very much all for the very insightful presentation, Valentino and Yan. And now here I think we'll be moving into this more interesting interactive session. Here I would like to first start with few questions which at least I prepared in my mind, and also some questions might have some common feature, and here I might combine one with those raised by online. So there's a very good question now raised. I not necessarily follow the order of the chat, but just would like to make it more lively. Okay. So the very first question. So is there are those three laws different from the European ones and or inspired by the European or American legislation on data? This was a question raised by a participant from online. I think indeed, from European perspective, there are a lot of knowledge about GDPR. I think always the very interesting question would be, so what are the major difference or common grounds? And here I would like to raise this question to Eduardo. Maybe you are GDPR or specialist. Maybe you can share with us more insight.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Well, definitely that's a good question. And I think this is the perfect forum for us to discuss. We are here in the small and medium enterprise forum. So answering the question straightforward, the personal information protection law is deeply inspired by the GDPR. So European companies, we have an advantage here. I'm sure that all the attendees physically here in Shanghai or online, we all did a huge effort back in 2017, 2018 to get ready for that day when the GDPR entered into force, and obviously the upcoming developments. So yeah, I think it's a good news that the personal information protection law is inspired by that, because that means that we are somehow familiar with it. But well, I think we have to hold our horses. That doesn't mean that the whole work is done. Actually, there are several aspects where, believe it or not, the Chinese regulation may go even further than the European GDPR. As an instance, if we are talking about cross-border data transfer, let me refer to the standard contractual clauses that Valentino and Gian has already mentioned. So from the perspective of privacy professional DPO, who is already familiar with the standard contractual clauses according to the GDPR, what are the common elements with the Chinese standard contractual clauses? Which are the main differences? Well, the Chinese standard contractual clauses and the European standard contractual clauses, there are several common elements, but we are in China, so there's always Chinese characteristics, Chinese elements that are going to make it different. Starting with those, let's start with the similarities. I'm basically just going to mention two of them. The first one is that in both cases, we are talking about a fixed format. It's a standard format we cannot modify. That is a common thing, but at the end of the road is a disadvantage, as we are going to see, because there are some elements of the Chinese contractual clauses that do not match, cannot fit with the requirements of European regulation and the other way around. Second aspect, and in common in between the European standard contractual clause and the Chinese one, is the impact assessment. And here I think this is actually a deep advantage for European companies. Since 2020, since the ruling of the European Court of Justice in the Stream 2 case, for cross-border data transfer from Europe, it's necessary to do a transfer risk assessment, which actually is substantially similar to the one you have to do if you want to get used to the if you want to use the Chinese standard contractual clauses. That element is one of the core issues on the standard contractual clauses. If, as a company, you are eligible to do so, as with the if you can fit within the requirements to choose the standard contractual clauses. But those would be the similarities. What are the main points of difference? There are some of it. Starting from the scope of application, as we mentioned before, according to the GDPR, there is actually no requirements or minor requirements if you want to get the standard contractual clauses for a cross-border data transfer. Chinese law, we have already seen it. You cannot be a critical information operator. You cannot process over 1 million data, or there's also these other 2 thresholds in terms of processing. That is the main difference. Secondly, and this is one of the aspects I mentioned before, that this is the main point of conflict could be, which is the jurisdiction. We are talking about standard contracts, fixed contracts that cannot be modified. And from the European, the GDPR side, we can see that is mandatory, the parties is mandatory that the contract must be subject to the jurisdiction of one of the member states, while as per the Chinese standard contractual clauses, it has to be either Chinese jurisdiction or arbitration in a country that is a member of the New York Convention. So only with this element, we can see that it is not possible, unfortunately, to use one standard contractual clauses or to use the European standard contractual clauses for the Chinese cross-border data transfer. Another element that is different from one and another applicable law, in case of the GDPR, parties can reach an agreement and they can decide on even on a third-party law if they want to, as long as that third-party law respects the rights of the data users. Chinese is mandatory to be subject to Chinese law. So based on that, we can see that these are, in case of companies with presence in China, presence in Europe, unfortunately, if there is a cross-border data transfer in between both jurisdictions, we will mandatory, if we are choosing a standard contractual clauses, we will mandatory need to use both of them. Just to finalize with the standard contractual clauses, for onwards data transfer, the GDPR is quite flexible or light obligations there, while the Chinese standard contractual clauses actually is mandatory to include certain requirements related to those onwards data transfer if it's outside of China. Last but not least, because it's one of the relevant issues here, and Valentin already anticipated, which is the filing. According to European law, with the accountability principle, we have our standard contractual clauses, and we must keep it in our office jointly with all the other bunch of papers related to data compliance in case they came and ask. Chinese personal information protection law follows the same principle of accountability, but in certain areas, they require a specific filing. This is one of those, which means our standard contractual clauses, once that is concluded, we must need and take it to the authority for a filing. It's not an approval, it's a filing. They may be subject to a review and request for some clarifications, but ideally it's a filing. And here I would like to take one minute to highlight the relevance of the accountability principle that Valentin already mentioned. Here, I'd like to emphasize that Chinese personal information law, it follows the same accountability principle, meaning we need to prove that we are compliant. And here, just a brief story which happened, actually, it was a month and a half ago. It was when Europe changed time, China, we didn't change time. It was 2 in the afternoon here. I was not used to have calls that early from Europe. And it was a client, we're working with them in the corporate area, not specifically related to privacy protection. And he called me, let's say his name was Michael, for example, because he sounded agitated. Michael, what's happening? I'm here with the DPO. We received a call from our China office. The China office, let me say, that is quite small. They have 2 employees, but this is something that Jan already anticipated, which is regardless of the size of your subsidiary here, you must check your data. You must check the data you're collecting, processing in China. Going back, he was really surprised that we received a call from our subsidiary last night. 3 cyber policemen came to our offices. He was really surprised by the cyber police. He didn't even know what a cyber policeman was. Actually, the cyber police, they found almost by accident that the representative of this company who filed certain documents before the authority, it was now signing for another company, meaning he left our client, he's with another client, and the authority find that out. And just with that tiny thing, they went to visit our client. Luckily, our client, they were in compliance. They forgot this tiny refiling a new person. But you can imagine the noise that this can generate in the headquarters. When you receive a call from China saying that 3 cyber police went to your office and they're starting to request for papers. So just to have in mind and to remind the relevance of being compliant. This is regardless of your size, because actually this is unfortunately it's a common question when you explain them everything that we are discussing here, and the answer is yes, but we only have 2, we only have 5 employees. Yeah, okay, it seems like some companies, they measure the data in the numbers of employees they have, not in the number of the actual data they process. So that is in terms of a standard contractual clauses. Let me just briefly highlight couple of areas where the GDPR and the Chinese personal information protection law diverges from each other. So if you're a DPO, if you're an expert in GDPR, basically I will highlight 3 main aspects which differs from one and another, which actually I think has been already mentioned by Valentino and Jan during the presentation, but I think is useful to summarize those 3 aspects. The first one would be the difference in between sensitive information according to a Chinese law and special data according to the GDPR. Sensitive personal information is definitely more broad than what can be considered as per the GDPR. There is no specific list of aspects, even though Jan, they did a really good job there. As a way of example, financial information that Valentin already mentioned. That is something which headquarters usually, when we share this information, they are very surprised. So basically, any kind of business transaction involving a payment, there is going to be a data processing there. Second one, I would highlight in our experience is one of the trendy ones, is the legal grounds for processing data. In Europe, especially in terms of human resources within a company, I'd say companies are used to process the data of their employees based on legitimate interest. However, Chinese law do not include legitimate interest as a basis for the processing. Meaning, if we are going to process the data of our employees here, we will need to pay special attention to the way we collect their consent. Last but not least, penalties. Penalties, Chinese law more or less follow the same structure as the GDPR. I think it's a really good sign. This is not very popular to say. I think it's a good sign that the Chinese personal information protection law also follows the GDPR in there, because that actually shows the intention of the legislator taking this law seriously and the aiming of enforcing it. But more than the penalties itself, the main difference between GDPR, Chinese personal information protection law, is what Jan already anticipated, the personal liability of the legal representative. GDPR stays at the level of legal entities. Here in China, if there is a breach, depending on the circumstances, there can be liabilities also for the individuals liable for that. So just to, I don't want to take more of the time because we also have another panelists here. I'm sure we are all looking forward to hear from them. But just to share a message here, which is answering the question, yes, the personal information protection law in China is inspired by the GDPR. Two, I think that leaves European companies in a very good position here. We have the knowledge, we have the experience, and definitely we can take advantage of all the work that we did to adapt to the GDPR. And obviously, we will need to pay attention to the data we process in China and make the relevant modification, adaptation to our internal procedures to adapt it to the Chinese law. So basically, we are in a good position here, but obviously there is work to do to adapt to it.
Thank you, Eduardo. Very insightful. I think I do concur very much your statement, which Yan also just mentioned. SME does not mean that your data sensitivity is SME. So do be very careful. So I'm now going to pick up another question from our online attendees. So this is more relevant to those sitting here in China. It says that we need to review and gatekeeping, okay? After validation by ourselves, so who's the very last gatekeeper to let go the data? So this is a very practical question. I would like to maybe ask Valentino. You may first share your view on this, please.
That's a spicy question. All right, so I would say something that would make some of my colleagues upset. You don't need lawyers to do this. You don't need anybody. The law does not force you to have consultant to do this job. The law would be crazy to force you to pay for somebody for something like that. Will means give you a cost from the legislator. Makes no sense. You can do the PIA, self-assessment, standard contractual clause, everything by yourself. There is no gatekeeper whatsoever. You assess the situation of your data on your own, make an evaluation and apply to the government in case you need to have approval by the CIC, or you do the filing, as Eduardo mentioned, if you need to file the standard contractual clause. Okay? Of course, you might not be sure what you're doing. That's why you entrust people with suits to help you out. That makes sense. But it's not mandatory. You don't need a legal opinion. You don't need ending sign from me that tell you, you are CIO, you need to go to the government, or you do 10,000 sensitive information, you must go there. You can do all this by yourself. There are formats that you can find online, especially for the standard contractual clauses. You can download them by yourself and fill the information, okay? Also, the requirement for the PIE, for the standard contractual clause, so the self-evaluation is not extremely complex. So you just need to put the information that the government asks you to put inside. The greatest issue you might have is the data inventory. I will repeat it forever. Know what kind of data you have. Because by yourself, you might not understand what kind of data you're processing. You might need assistance of lawyers, you might need assistance of Yan that tell you this is sensitive, this is not sensitive. Because maybe you're not professional, you don't know. You say, why the ID card of my employee is sensitive? It's an ID card, you just give it to everybody, right? But no, it's not, it's a sensitive information, okay? Another things you might have problem, very big problem. Nobody deletes data. Nobody deletes the data. Everybody keep all the data forever. The 10,000 sensitive information, okay, in 1 year, include also the data that you never deleted in the last 20 years that you operated your company. So if you have maybe 2,000 employee, 3,000 employee, you say, hey, I don't reach the threshold, good for you. But in the last 20 years, you never delete the data of anybody. You have all spreadsheet in the server in Germany. You have like 20,000 people information because people resign, you never delete those data. That's why you need maybe Yan, you need Eduardo, or if you want even me, if you need me, to come and tell you, look, you must delete this data. But in my opinion, I don't know if Yan has a different opinion. There is no gatekeeper. Basically, you go to the government, you apply, maybe they bounce you, they tell you, hey, this is not precise, you need to redo it. Of course, hiring somebody make it life easier, but what Eduardo mentioned today before the meeting is that they are a client law firm, means they follow the clients in a project. They don't just give you standard contractual clauses. Don't ask for one-shot service. That's damaging. You say, oh, I need standard contractual clauses. That's not enough. You must integrate privacy, data protection in your organization. Have to be inside the organization. You need to think of data protection for the future. It need to be implemented. You need to use people like them, very skillful, that integrate data inside your system. Cannot just do the standard contractual clause, who cares? You will be not compliant. You have the problem tomorrow. Not sure Yan want to add something, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is a highly practical question. I would like to spend a bit more of time on this one. So I think it would be very helpful to also get some insight from Xiaowei, who is more on the operational side. And also later on, I also would like to ask Yan from online to shed further light on this. Okay, so Xiaowei,
So
please.
I think, you know, as a IT guy, so I can provide some information from the IT world. Actually, we don't have like a gatekeeper, right? So, but in the IT world, we do have like a data gateway. So for example, we can build up, leverage the programming, leverage like the cross-border data transfer system to, like, for example, at the beginning, you need to classify the data, right? And you decide what kind of data you store in China. But once you like classify and tag your data, so we in the IT world, we can help customers to build up a system. So whenever what kind of data need to be transferred outside from your like internal like ERP system or CRM, right? So it can be triggered as an alarm or approval. So once your and it can be only be transferred outside. If you get the approval, like from your lawyer, like from your cybersecurity department, or from your CIO anywhere. But actually, so we have a lot of collaboration with lawyer firm, with like a PwC consulting firm. So we can build up such kind of system for custom to trick and monitor. So what kind of data can be transferred? Because sometimes, so you need to have a like a centralized control system to avoid like your employee do it personally, right? So it's a little bit complex in this part. Yeah.
Thank you, Charlie. I think that's very good to combine automation with still human brains in the end, so which will definitely be more powerful. And Yan, I see you are still online. Any comments you would like to throw onto this topic, please?
Sure. Real quick. Thank you, panelists. I was actually trying my best to answer the questions on our online chat room. So there's a same question as to the final goal, right? I actually answered the government, but now I understand it's within the company, right? Who is the final goal for this? So my observation is it's really a combined effort. I agree with all the panelists. It's number one is a combine of technology and legal and consultation and company business. It's really a combined effort. Not one single department can say yes to this. So second is so that actually gives companies the difficulty, which is we probably don't have this role to say this, because under GDPR, right, we have DPO, like Data Protection Officer. And although PIPO does kind of similarly require DPO, but for small, medium-sized enterprises like us, right, for SME, we probably don't have so many departments and so many roles. So that's why for SME, we have to organize this task force to have the knowledge and authority from IT and business and legal and sometimes compliance to really think together and work together for this. And that's a challenge actually, but it's a challenge that we have to face, and it's a challenge that everybody is facing under this context. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Yan. I think indeed it's
Sure.
quite valid to say that, because there are so many, it's quite new, so ambiguous. So whether or not you swallow that down within your paid salary in terms of liabilities, or you revert to external help, that's indeed a question that you might need to properly consider in the Chinese context. I think now I would like to open grounds to our audience to collect more lively questions to our panelists. So are there any questions, comments you would like to raise to our panelists, please? Yes, please. And please kindly mention your company and name.
I'm coming from Sanofi China, Sanofi Aventis pharmaceutical company. So actually, we already filing to the CEC Central, but still we have some like concern on a very specific technical questions, because currently all our filing are all related to the business transaction, business system, regarding like a ERP or CIM or those systems. But still we have some like concern in one specific area. For example, we have some IT tools like Office 365. No doubt, it's like a cross border. If like sending an email with like 1,000 people with information to a foreigner, it's a cross border. And also in regarding like we have global process, which like a central control, just like we are matrix organization. So some IT control is reside in the US or in the Germany. So for example, if we have some like a system like Azure China in China, we have the global requirement, which you need a specific team in the Europe or in the US to control all the user account. but all those user accounts sometimes is related to the personal information, like the username, the contact information, all those things. It's like a access from the outside of the China, then to the employer. We don't know if the employer is China or non-China. This is some employee in China, but mostly it's in China. So regarding this, but this time filing, which we initiated in last year, we didn't include this part, but we still have some like concern till now. I think till today we're still discussing on these topics. So how is your position on those filing? I think maybe most so far is a no. I think most company didn't include this part into their filing this time. But how is your position on these topics?
Thank you. This is a very good question. I do notice that you mentioned quite a lot of Azure, Office 365. You are obviously very much Microsoft using. Yeah, I think I would like to get comments from all the panelists. But first, I also do like to learn a bit about how AWS is viewing your competitors. Anything you might shed light on that?
Yes,
please?
that's a good topic. So as you know, previously a lot of like large company, or I mean, they have a centralized software CRM, you know, in their headquarters. And for example, Office 365, like SAP, they only have one SAP or one Office 365 to serve all the world, including China mainland. But today we have found that a lot of MNC, I mean global companies, they start to move China for China. For example, we have the observation in the industrial, a lot of companies they start to separate and like to build a separate independent like a CRM system, SAP system in China for China to avoid. Although I mean you can follow in like the requirement to the data assessment, to the data transformation, but which means when you do the transformation, you are taking a risk. But if you like to put your data isolated in China mainland for China, this will help you to mitigate the risk. That's what our observation. But to be honest, it's a little bit tough, like to you need to convince your global headquarter IT, the CIO, because it will bring extra cost, right? It will a little bit harder for them to manage a centralized. I think, but I mean the law is just launched last year. I think in the next like 3 to 5 years, a lot of global companies will follow these steps to go China and for China. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, please, Brian.
Okay, so Microsoft 365. I have 10 minutes. No, I think I can do it in 2. You also need to tackle this issue from another perspective. Is Microsoft 365 allowed to sell cloud service in China? Because Microsoft 365 now is migrating China operation to 21 ViaNet. They're using a local vendor. Same things happen with Apple and etc. So there is a cybersecurity risk also involved, not only for transferring data. You need to consider that you are using a vendor which in China should not provide this service. So this is a cybersecurity risk. For the data perspective, what we suggest our client, because of course global operation, is to filter the data. I understand that you need to have Active Directory, have access to the employee and what they need to do and what not, but you can filter sensitive informations. You can mask IDs to limit the risk in case the government come and check you. So what we're doing, we are using connectors to feed, well, no, I'm not using it, I'm a lawyer, but clients are using connectors to filter the data. So we tell Microsoft 365 what kind of information should not go out China, what information can go out of China. For the one that go out for China, we do the PIA on the personal information process impact assessment, and we do the filing for SEC. But what is important is, as I mentioned, the crazy things with those clouds is that people are lazy or deleting the data because you have unlimited storage. So nobody deletes anything. In Germany, people keep data of your employee in Active Directory, hired in 1983. They're still there. Those counts for also the, you know, the threshold. So keep this in mind. And I think as has been mentioned, we assist a lot of companies that are doing migration. So China operation for China, what is global for example, SAP, CRM, ERP, they just try to limit what is necessary. Because right now, nobody rule about this. CAC did not say you cannot, you know, so it's very gray area situation, but we know you cannot stop your operation. The best solution is prepare something. If somebody come and check, you can try to justify what you're doing. If you cannot justify what you're doing, then gonna come hard.
Very good. I think the question also concerns about coverage of all business, right? So I do like Eduardo, maybe also from GDPR perspective, how you manage that coverage topic. I mean, I have my CRM system filed. Okay, I have my Salesforce filed, and I have Microsoft filed, and then is that good enough? So what would be the GDPR position? Is this a system-based or process-based? So how is that?
In which sense, Mike? Sorry.
I mean, about how strict is GDPR? I mean, regarding all these filings, because we may be having same issues here on the ground, meaning that how broad is the compliance coverage? Is it enough if I have done, as the gentleman mentioned, my CRM system, that's done, okay? And Microsoft may be done, and what else?
Yeah, there, well, I think we definitely, we have to follow what we mentioned before, which is the accountability principle. Let's get ready to show an evidence that we are in compliance with what the law has requested us. And as Valentino mentioned, until, at least here in China, until the situation what happened in China with these laws that we have been discussing today is that the reality has gone farther and faster than the regulation. So we have the cybersecurity law 2017, and then until 2021, we had almost nothing. And when the law came in 2021, this previous year, 2022, and now 2023, is when the law is starting to develop. So in these cases where there are blanks to be filled, following with and the same ideas as Valentino may have shown now, until recently, March and February this year, we didn't have a clear guidance on standard contractual clauses and in the certification. So, well, for those cases that you cannot be compliant because the regulation, the law has not reached there yet, well, at least to be able to prove that you have done everything that was in your hand, and that processing that you have been doing respond to a purpose, to a sense, and that you have adopted the technical measures that could fit in a situation like that.
Okay, thank you. I think exactly as also Xiaowei and Valentino mentioned, that besides just following all these procedures, you might need to more revisit your fundamental IT architect problems, questions, which you need to discuss with head office. But the topic itself is indeed quite hot and interesting. Before we close down, I do like to still collect more questions if possible. I noted we have limited time, so any further questions, please? Yeah, please, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. I'm from Akama Group China and taking charge of information and cybersecurity management. I'm Jason. So my company currently in Great China only have employee around 3,000 employees, including the blue collars and white collars. Okay, and we alignment with our legal team and want to go through the SCC to filing to the CAC government. So, but from my understanding, the how to say, DPIA, right? Data protection impact analysis. So actually, I think it's similar with others company. We use the Salesforce, SAP, and the SuccessFactors, right? So for DPIA, from my understanding, if we find some issues, some gap, so how to fix these issues? I think this is global applications, so it's hard to fix. So how to do that? This is my concern about this.
Well,
Thank you.
Very good, very practical questions. I think our practitioners will have quite some insight. Please.
All right, so gaps compared to the DPIA, right? So you do the DPIA as something doesn't square, so you can fix it. You need to look up what is the gap. Is it a technical measure? Like, do you miss something you are not doing it? If there is something you are not doing, you're supposed to do it. But I give you another insight, more practical. Everybody running a network, also your case, need to pass the MLPS 2.0, the multi-level risk, okay? Because this is required by the data security law at national level. So you have a 5 level of risk. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Level 1 means nobody cares because there is no risk if your data leaks. Level 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on how severe is this. When you involve with MLPS 2.0, there is an evaluation done by a third company, if you are level 2 and above, that check your IT structure. If you have a gap, they will provide you advice. Because if you don't fix this gap, you don't get the MLPS certification, your IT structure is not secure. So this is from technical perspective, okay? Organizational perspective, that's just a matter of how your organization is organized, is paperwork, basically. You need to assign somebody to handle certain things, and maybe you need a CISO, somebody to handle those kind of things. But in general, the biggest problem I found with the DPIA when it comes to the government CAC approval is that they really go into detail. They even want to know the number of megabytes of data that is transferred. For this DPIA, there is a bump, there is a standard that you can download. Okay, and you will see that in this standard, they even ask you the transfer that you make, how much data is transferring outside. That part is pretty complex because when it comes to having a VPN with a server abroad, it's very difficult to understand how much data is going back and forth. You can't really predict precisely. So I think that is maybe more technical obstacle. But for everything else, if you need to be like data security compliant, you're supposed to have passed the MLPS. If you try to do the MLPS, there is somebody coming and checking. Usually is IT people, is not lawyers, is very technical. And they tell you how to fill those gaps. They will tell you, you miss, I don't know, encryptions. You're supposed to encrypt. You don't use SSL for certain communication, all those kind of stuff. Maybe you use Telnet, your Telnet, I don't know, protocol 23 is still open, those kind of stuff, right? But this can be checked by technical people and they can help you out on this. Yeah, not sure if I answer, if this was the question, like, do you have a gap, how to fix it, right?
Yes.
All right. Any more comments? Eduardo, shall we?
My comments is like, I'm not sure whether you also ask about how to fix from the technical side, right? So if you mention about, so from my understanding, I mean, in the future, a lot of global companies, they should have like one system in like headquarters, right? And one system in China mainland. and then they will like leverage like some consulting partner, lawyer partner, or technical partner to build up, like as I mentioned, it's called data gateway keeper inside of the transformation. And based on that, they need to establish a cross-border direct connection like between your two regions or data center, and then your like CIO or like your security department and all the partners need to work together to put in like what kind of mechanism you need to follow, like the tracking or alarm, what kind of data you transfer like from China to global, or what kind of data you get from global to China. Because for global company, we cannot do business isolated, right? We need to have the internal data transfer between China mainland and outside. But following like the Chinese cybersecurity law, we do, I mean, need to find some solution. So, and we already have a lot of customers do this. Last year, AWS, we helped one of the top like sports shoes company to migrate all of their application to China mainland, and then we have like consulting work with them to set up their independent we call a gateway guide, a data gateway guide to help them to monitoring what kind of data transfer between like two sides.
Yeah, please, Eduardo.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing following with the message here from Xiaowei. I mean, we have been here for almost 2 hours talking about the cross-border mechanism and the doubts we have been discussing. But going back to the previous question, which is whether the Chinese law is inspired by the GDPR. It is, and it's also in the sense of promoting business. It's business oriented, same as the GDPR, meaning obviously there is a right that we have to protect in here, but the law tried to do it not blocking business. So here, just to share this message, what we've been sharing today are different mechanism to follow this cross-border. The law is not putting barriers to it. Okay, I think it's important to highlight that the law here is a delicate balance in between the maintaining its business orientation, but also obviously they need to protect. And especially here in China, we have with the cybersecurity and national interest. But overall, at least in terms of data, law is business oriented.
Thank you. Thank you for our panelists. I think indeed. Yeah. So please, another question, please. Eduardo?
Just now you said we don't need law. We can do something by ourselves. But if we have to how to say rely on law to do something, but we feel the law force us to be somebody or to do something what you feel is not really exact, but they know everything. They know every detail. What's your
who knows every detail? Lawyers?
Law.
No, it's not true. I'm a lawyer, so I don't know every detail.
Not saying that every lawyer.
No.
Lawyer.
Okay, maybe I'm the bad lawyer, but
Yeah,
no. Okay, no.
So
Okay, the best skill lawyer have is be good in finding things.
One sentence. Maybe they want to make things simple. They just try to force you to follow their clue and finish. And they think you're not expert. You're not professional. You should follow them. But actually, as a client, as a person in a main rules, maybe they are feeling and sense is most correct here. This is what I feel. But we always feel maybe not only law. I just pick up some example, something like this. Some people think they are powerful. Some people think they are professional. Some people think they are very, very, very high level than you. But actually, you are more
Better than them.
better than them because you are the main rule. This is the point.
Yeah. Yeah, well, first, I don't think I know everything. Actually,
That's
I
a lot. That's
know-
a lot. When
I'm, what I'm sure is that I don't know everything. That's what I'm sure about that. But there was some studies done about how the law is becoming more and more complex. That has been quantified in numbers. How the law become more and more complex is not really helping the society. The law is supposed to translate in simple terms what the society is supposed to do. Because if you don't understand the law, you will violate it. The scope of the law is not that you violate it, it's that you follow it. That's true. But this is like more philosophical level of understanding. What I think is that for, I know personal information protections is complex and using lawyer might be easy. But I also suggest you to put effort and learn by yourself as well, together with your lawyer, because you need to integrate this thing inside your company. You cannot let lawyer consultant do this job for you forever, because your company need to integrate these things. The same way your company integrate, I don't know, a purchase CRM or whatever, or ERP system, you need to learn how to implement data protection. When you receive data, when you receive information from somebody, you need to have a system to know what you're doing, right?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know since 1980. I'm old enough.
Yeah.
I know in American, USA, they more do rely on lawyer very much, even as a normal citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how about European? The similar or they do something else?
Okay.
They are similar like China, because I know as a Chinese, probably I'm Chinese. Most of the normal citizens, they do really fear of the losses. They don't think it works really. There is something we heard always. You should take something and solve something. If you have a law, if you have trial,
Don't be
you
sure.
think you have
Don't be.
then you can solve everything. But
I think that we might be talking about different compliance culture. Yeah. So
I think during the coffee break, we can talk about this, but don't be scared of lawyer. We don't bite.
yeah.
We bite those.
I just want to mention, like, if you talk about compliance and security for enterprise, for company, it's always security zero. So lawyer will try to help you avoid any tiny risk. That's from the lawyer's perspective. But from personal right, you need to always want to accelerate something, facilitate something. But I mean, we can talk from different perspective, because
I saw always, because I work in a German company for 9 years, and that level, I always meet a high lawyer, but I also ever meet basic, let's just start, or some basic systems. Their lawyers, I don't want to say.
I think it should be very easy, because if you may I suggest that in case you are clients, actually you have your freedom to change a lawyer to a good lawyer, right? Very simple. Yeah.
Get lawyer.
Yeah.
That's simple. I try to fight by myself all of it.
Okay. I think I'm a bit cautious of the schedule of our events. Our speakers and they share their WeChat and contact detail, and also our panelists will stay here after the event. I do encourage our participants who still have questions of your specific customer, your own case questions, do feel free to reach out to our panelists who are very insightful, very experienced. Today's session is free of charge. Okay. So try to make best use of that. And for those participating from online, also please feel free to then reach out to our chambers. And here, I mean, still, I now would like to hand back, according to our procedures, to our SME Centre, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Michael Tan, for moderating this panel discussion. Indeed, personally, I quite enjoyed this. So thank you all for making it happen. So as we are approaching the end of this, I would like to ask all of you, especially our participants who are joining from Europe and Shanghai, to take 1 minute to scan the code to take our quick survey, because this is very important for us, the EU SME Centre. We would like to know how you think about today's workshop, how basically what kind of topics you would like to see next time in our next training. So it is very crucial for us. Please take 1 minute to do this. We would like to know how we could better serve in the future for your needs. All right, I'll just leave this code here. Take your time.
So feedback your comments to the SME Center chambers. Your feedback are highly appreciated. And I think you can still also reach out to chamber colleagues to get this QR code, right? In order to not keep everybody waiting here.
Yeah,
so,
indeed. Yeah, I'll just use the 1 minute thing. That should be enough. We will also send up a follow-up email 1 to 5 days after this workshop to basically give everybody a recorded webinar for those participants who are not able to join us for today. All right, I just want to say thank you again for taking part in today's workshop. To your two keynote speakers, again, Ms. Yensun, Mr. Valentino Lucchini, and our panelists and moderator, of course. Thank you very much.